As free agency looms in the 2024 offseason, the Baltimore Ravens are truly on the hook to build a contender around Lamar Jackson. Did EDC get too much credit for building a team that ended up in the AFC Championship? We discuss next on the GM. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy Boulanger. Up next on the GM, EDC receives too much credit, and Lamar Jackson has done it again. Do me a quick favor, hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. So, why do I say EDC gets too much credit? Well, EDC got a lot of credit when the season ended for putting together an AFC Championship level team, getting guys like Ronald Darby, Jadavion Clowney, Cal Van Noy, drafted Zay Flowers, and also picking up Odell Beckham Jr. But if I can tell you a real truth, okay, Ronald Darby wasn't signed until the Ravens knew that Marlon Humphrey was injured. So he was kind of best player available at a position of need. Follow the thread. Jadavion Clowney wasn't signed until Tyus Bowser was injured. He was kind of best player available at a position of need. Calvin Noy wasn't signed until David Ajabo went down. Kinda best player available at a position of need. Now, I will give them credit for Zay Flowers. They believed that Zay Flowers was the guy from the time that they met him in the pre-draft process. But Odell Beckham was signed because he was the best player available at a position of need. Why do I put it in that context? Well, it's not, I put it in that context because it wasn't like EDC was just searching the depths of the free agent market and found some diamonds in the rough. It was really kind of a best player available at a position of need post an injury. All right. And so when we take a look at this Baltimore Ravens success this season, the defense absolutely was historic. Okay. But that's because a lot of the investment over the last 6 years has been where? In the defense. You see, the reason why I say Lamar Jackson has done it again, I've been saying this for probably a calendar year that the Baltimore Ravens has have to build out this offensive repertoire in order to really put them in position to win a Super Bowl. Because right now, just like last year, it was Lamar Jackson or bust. And that's what we saw in the AFC Championship, and that's what we saw sometimes in the regular season, where if Lamar Jackson does not make a play will not be made. And so an article comes out. I think several writers contributed to the overall article, but then it was kind of put out on a couple of different platforms. And I ran into it just kind of on accident. But it talked about how Lamar Jackson carried the Baltimore Ravens offense in 2023. So I'm gonna let I'm gonna let the article speak for itself, and then I'm gonna come back and talk about what we hear.
The Baltimore Ravens may have had one of the best offenses in the league last season, but that's not hard to do when you have a quarterback in Lamar Jackson, who is one vote shy of winning the MVP in unanimous fashion twice. The players around him might not be as stellar as Jackson himself. On top of the fact that center Tyler Linderbaum is the only player on the offensive line who is guaranteed a starting spot in Baltimore. Next season, Jackson has never had a truly elite collection of wide receivers around him. Even after Zay Flowers broke out as a rookie, the depth isn't exactly stellar next to him. Bleacher Report shares a very pessimistic view of the Ravens' offense, specifically their young talent. Baltimore was ranked 29th in the league in terms of building blocks on the offensive side, with only Linderbaum and Flowers receiving any sort of high marks in this exercise. The only teams who ranked below Baltimore are the rival Cleveland Browns, who are saddled with the Deshaun Watson albatross and a very scary Nick Chubb injury, and a pair of teams who fired their 2023 coaches and are starting from the ground in the Las Vegas Raiders and New England Patriots.
Hold up, wait 1 second. There's more.
No matter what happens when the draft rolls around, examinations like this underscore the idea that Baltimore is perhaps over-reliant on Jackson and his ability to make magic happen. Perhaps that explains why the Herculean effort of one man is not enough to get them over the top when the playoffs come around.
All right. So, a few things that we heard in the article is that Lamar Jackson carried the offense because he doesn't have a prolific depth of weaponry. And we've understood that for 5 of the 6 years. I say five because the first year, 2018, he wasn't a starter until halfway through that season. But many people have made the case that Lamar Jackson has been playing with a lack of weapons, right? And so this past offseason, they, added a couple of wide receivers, Aguilar and Odell Beckham, and everybody wet their pants saying that Lamar Jackson doesn't have any more excuses. And I'm not making excuses for Lamar Jackson. In fact, this is not even a defense of Lamar Jackson. And this is indeed an indictment for the Baltimore Ravens, which is where I began this channel last year, indicting the Baltimore Ravens and EDC along with John Harbaugh. Okay. Another thing that we noticed from this article is that Tyler Linderbaum and Zay Flowers, basically, out of the other offensive weapons, were the only ones that were notable building blocks. Okay, as it pertains to young talent. Another thing that we noticed is that the Baltimore Ravens ranked 29th out of 32 teams along with teams like the Las Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots, both who fired their head coaches this offseason for having a lack of talent. You see, the fact of the matter is the Baltimore Ravens have not fully supported Lamar Jackson when it comes to building out this offense, when it comes to really going hard after a receiver, right, to put in that number one spot and then add the supplemental parts. Yes, the Baltimore Ravens do get credit for drafting a litany of wide receivers, a whole host of receivers who would come in and have to prove themselves with a young quarterback, but not really go get a guy who was already proven, already established, who could serve as a go-to, right? Let's go through the list really quickly. Mark Andrews was and has been Lamar Jackson's go-to guy, right? But how did Mark Andrews get there? Through the draft, right? Who had to develop into a receiving tight end, right? And then became one of the better tight ends in the league with a young quarterback. Marquise Hollywood Brown, who of course they traded after having a 1,000 yard season. Who does that and not replace him? You understand what I'm saying? How did he get there? Through the draft, first rounder. Rashad Bateman, who we're still waiting on. How did he get there? Through the draft. Devin Duvernay, Talon Wallace, Miles Borkins, a whole host of wide receivers who were drafted. Kudos to the Baltimore Ravens for drafting. But where is the guy who is proven to help lead this offense with a young quarterback? Hmm? Where's that guy? The most notable guy, I want you to hear the name I'm finna drop. The most notable guy who was proven coming in was Sammy Watkins. Yeah, I understand that Odell Beckham has a bigger name and has a bigger resume, but at the time that the Baltimore Ravens signed Odell Beckham last offseason, he was coming off an ACL injury, and we had not seen him on the field at the time that he was being signed in almost 19 months. So Sammy Watkins is the most notable name that the Baltimore Ravens brought in at the beginning of a season for Lamar Jackson. You see, and so now this is how John Harbaugh can say out of his mouth, after 6 seasons, yes, we're going to finally build this offense around Lamar Jackson. Well, hold it. That's what people said that they were doing in 2019. That's what people said that they were doing in 2020. That's what people said they were doing in 2021. That's what people were saying they were doing in 2020. And that's what they said they did in 2023. And then even when you look at the running backs, I don't remember how everybody got to Baltimore, but I know J.K. Dobbins is the only highly rated running back that they picked. They brought in an aging Mark Ingram, Justice Hill. I believe he was a late round pick, and then Keaton Mitchell, who was explosive this past season, was an undrafted rookie. So where did the Baltimore Ravens increase the talent level around Lamar Jackson? Hold it, let's not stop there. Now let's go to the line because what they mentioned was Tyler Lindenbaum is the only player guaranteed rather, to have a starting spot this upcoming season. Well, let's think about this. Why haven't the Baltimore Ravens drafted a left tackle at all in the Lamar Jackson era after the serious injury Ronnie Stanley first suffered about 3 seasons ago? Why did the Baltimore Ravens not draft and or hold on to? So I'm gonna put it into context. They did draft Orlando Brown, who has shown an ability to play left tackle, who started out at right tackle, but what did they do? They traded him away. Huh? Is that what we're doing? They traded him away after Ronnie Stanley had been injured. Now you tell me that makes sense. And then they had a guy who was really good and Ben Powers. What did they do? Let him walk in free agency. And then they brought in Kevin Zeitler. And he's played super well, but he's getting long in the tooth. And so I guess they're going to decide to let him walk this year. So now when Lamar Jackson lines up behind center, the only guy he knows he's going to have for a couple of seasons is Tyler Lindenbaum. See, this is what you call franchise malpractice. I don't want to hear anything about the great job that EDC has done. The Baltimore Ravens' success, specifically offensively, but when you look at it holistically, has been built on the backside of Lamar Jackson. Let's not stop there. See, the Baltimore Ravens have had no problem investing both draft capital and money in the defense, right? When they traded for Marcus Peters many years ago now, I think it's about 4 years ago now, what did they do? They traded for him, draft capital, and then they signed him. Monetary, a monetary investment. Remember when they didn't have any real edge rushers? They traded a third round pick. Maybe it was a fourth, but I remember it being a third for Ndakwe. That didn't pan out. They traded for Calais Campbell and then paid him, right? They traded for Smith, a second and a fifth, right? And then made him the highest paid linebacker in the whole league. Sounds like it's one-sided when it comes to investment. And then they took in last year's draft, they took David Ajabo with a second round pick, knowing he had an ACL tear and had no idea what he would be um when he would be available. And we're still waiting on him to show up. You see, the point that I'm making is that the Baltimore Ravens have made a one-sided investment. See, that's why the team can be historic. It's because the better of the investments have been made on one side of the ball. They went and got Michael Pierce, paid him, right? Didn't they go get him in free agency and pay him? Absolutely. Spent a third round pick on Trent Simpson last year. Spent a fourth round pick on Tavius Robinson last year. So you can clearly see it's one sided when it comes to investing in this team. And so when Lamar Jackson gets to an AFC championship and he fails, it's because he is offensively, it seems to be 1 on 11 because the defense has all the capital. They have all the player capital on one side of the ball. And so it's going to be super, super interesting, guys, what the Baltimore Ravens invest in this offseason. Now, we've heard a lot of talk that they're going to invest into the offensive line. I believe they will. They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice but to invest in the offensive line. I believe they're going to bring in a receiver or two, but I wonder if they'll take a big swing this time. I wonder if they'll take a big swing and really go get him a wide receiver. Well, we understand that guys like um, Mike Evans and Michael Pittman are the best two on the board, a big body receiver, which the Baltimore Ravens need. But Mike Evans has already said, hey, I want $25 million a year. Will they pony up the money? They can. You'll see a video that comes out where I show you the Baltimore Ravens have money if they want to use the money. And you will and so we're going to stop making the excuses that they're doing all they can to build around Lamar Jackson. Here's a real truth, and I'm going to say this out of my mouth. I'm going to say it first. You're going to hear it here first. If the Baltimore Ravens stumble and bargain bin shop and play around with the offense this offseason, then be prepared for the Baltimore Ravens to move on from Lamar Jackson between 2025 and 2026 because there will be no benefit to the Ravens long term if there's no investment. I know some of you say, well, Rashad Bateman, he got open the most of all the receivers. Don't matter. They don't have no connection. They don't have Lamar Jackson and Rashad Bateman hadn't had a connection because Rashad Bateman has been unhealthy, just like Lamar Jackson had between 2021 and 2022. Hadn't been healthy, and so I'm just saying, man, it's time to go get a couple of dudes that's proven. You see, you've heard a little bit of buzz that the Baltimore Ravens are gonna try and bring back J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Tell me why. Tell me why. You see, I would be okay with that if they're gonna go get a real wide receiver. If they're gonna move some things around and spend some real capital on building this offense, if they're gonna go get a Mike Evans, if they're gonna invest in a Michael Pittman, would I rather have Mike Evans over Mike Pittman? Yes, I absolutely would. But I definitely heard um, Justin Jefferson with some talk that hey, he might want to get up out of Minnesota. What would it take to go get him? It'll probably take at least three first rounders, or maybe two first rounders and two second rounders. What could this offense look like with Justin Jefferson? I guarantee that if he says he wants out, somebody will pony up the money to go get him. I'm just saying at some point it should be us. In the video I do, when I show you the money, I don't know what I'm going to title it yet. I'm going to show you the money. After that video, the Baltimore Ravens fan base will have no more excuse to say, you know what, we can't afford to get those guys. Because it's awful funny. We can find the money when it's defense, but then all of a sudden we can't find the money if it's offense. Let me prove that to you and then I'm out. Remember last offseason when the Baltimore Ravens thought that Darius Slay was going to be available? And no sooner than they heard that news, a deal was on the table. They went and found $50 million for Darius Slay. But then we bargain shopped in free agency for the offense. Don't seem to make sense. It don't seem that they really care about offense. Or or we're just leaning on Lamar Jackson to continue to carry a heavy load and come up short at the end of every season. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and we're out.